It is apparent that most of you guys understand what endings the chart contains, and you even know what each of the cases means in English. For example, the nominative, we all know, is the subject or the complement of the sentence. What I think we're struggling with, or some of us are struggling with, is what is a subject in English and what is a complement in English. And that's what this session is going to be about. The first thing we're looking at nominative. Here are nominative endings: A, AE, US, I. We don't have an established ending for the third declension, and ES for the plural. Depending on what declension it is, we'll change what endings we use for the nominative. Most of our English sentences have this structure right here: subject, verb, direct object. The nominative will go right here where the subject is. And the question is, of course, what is a subject? The subject is a doer of the action in this particular pattern. It does whatever the action is. So Tom runs. Who is doing the running? Tom is. The doer of this action is the subject of a sentence. And so if I see a Latin word that has a nominative ending, for example, Cornelius, we'll give him a Latin ending, US. That's that US right there. If I see a Latin word that has a nominative ending, that's where it's going to go in English. It's going to go where that subject belongs. And then, of course, if Cornelius is the one running, we would say current. Cornelius, nominative, does the running, the main verb. Now, we do have another pattern that has a subject. We have a linking verb pattern. So we get a subject, a linking verb, and a complement. Both this subject, right here, and the complement, right here, will have a nominative ending. In this case, the subject is the subject of a comparison or the comparison itself. So in English, we would say that Sextus is happy. Well, Sextus is the subject of this comparison. We're telling you or describing what he is. He is happy. Because he is the subject of this comparison, happy, it's telling me what he is, then he is the subject of that sentence. So we'll give him a nominative ending in Latin. And is, of course, is our est. Happy is the comparison itself, the complement. It's telling me what the subject is. It will also have one of these nominative endings. So in Latin, we're going to start off with sex. We're going to give him a nominative ending US. We have est as our linking verb. We start with light. We need a nominative ending for it. It is an adjective, so it has to agree with Sextus in case, number, and gender. The case of Sextus is nominative. The gender is, case number is singular. The gender is masculine. I have to give Lyta the same nominative singular masculine ending as Sextus. So if I get a linking verb in Latin, like est, chances are I'm going to have two nominatives that are linked together by that linking verb. One will be the subject of the comparison, the subject of the sentence. One will be the complement or the description of the subject. So that is what a complement and a subject are. When we're talking about nominatives being subjects or complements, a subject is either a doer of the action or it is a subject of that comparison. A complement is the comparison itself. It's what is describing the subject when we're using a linking verb. So in the Latin, if I get those nominative endings, that's what I'm looking for. If I have Cornelia, Flavium, tenant. That A being nominative, I know that that's going to be the doer of this action, tenant. Cornelia, and the verb is Holt. And we'll deal with Flavium here in a little bit. I also know that if I get a linking verb, if I say Davus est Eratus, I have two nominative endings here, the us and the us. One is the subject of the comparison. The other is the complement or the description of the subject. Well, if I look at this, I can have either Davis is angry, or I can have angry as Davis. Which one makes more sense? Well, Davis being the subject of that comparison is going to be the subject. The linking verb is. The adjective here describing him, or the complement, is angry. So we have a complement here, we have a subject here. Complements are associated with linking verbs. Subjects are associated with every single sentence that we have. There's going to be a subject. The subject is either going to be the doer of the action, like Cornelia is right here. She's doing the holding. Or they're going to be the subject of the comparison, like Davis is here. So hopefully that helps us out understanding what a subject and what a complement are. And those nominative endings are going to lead you to placing a word in English to a subject or a complement. Let's look at the genitive. In Latin, we know that there is a genitive case and that it represents possession or the word of. The endings for that genitive are A-E, A-R-U-M, I, O-R-U-M, I-S, and U-M. Again, depending on whether it's first declension, second declension, or third declension noun, those endings will vary. What is possession, though, in English? Well, possession is just an apostrophe S or an S apostrophe. It's when somebody owns something. If I have a car, well, whose car is it? Well, it's Dave's car. It's Dave's car. This possessive word, the person who possesses the noun, will have a genitive ending. Now we know that we have the word davus in Latin, and that the genitive of a second declension singular is I. So we're going to put dawi. We know that a car would be a vehiculus, vehiculum. So here Davis is possessing the car. This Davis actually in Latin will more than likely follow the noun that it possesses. In English, we put it the other way. We have the possession here, Dave's car. We have the possession followed by the noun. In Latin, more than likely, you'll have the noun followed by the possession word. So, what is possession in English? S apostrophe or apostrophe S. So when I get one of these genitive endings in Latin and I'm trying to translate it into English, if I know it's genitive, I'm looking for apostrophe S or S apostrophe. The other possibility, and it really works out the same way, is if I have a car, I use the word of plus the noun that I'm dealing with. In this case, we're talking about Dave's car or the car of Dave. Both of those mean the same thing. This of Dave is still a possession of the car. So in this case, I would have vehiculum again, followed by a possessive form of Dave. Possessive in English is of Dave or Dave's. Possession in Latin is genitive. So I go up here, I look at my endings again, and I have to use a genitive ending. We know that Dave is singular, so we can eliminate these plural endings. We know that Dave is not feminine, and we know he's not third declension, he is second declension, which is why we're using that letter I. So we have da, we. Still means the same thing. So vehiculum da we can be translated as Dave's car or the car of Dave, either one. So what is a possession in English? It's just the owner of the noun. Who owns or who possesses the noun. In English, we use apostrophe S, S apostrophe or the word of, to describe possession. Looking at the dative. The dative is the indirect object of a sentence, or translated as to or for. We still have specified endings, depending on whether it's first, second, or third declension. Those endings do change. That's why it's important for us to know what declension that noun belongs to. The pattern for the indirect object is similar to the one we've had with the subject, verb, and the direct object. The indirect object can be added in two different places in English. In English, we can put it here, following the verb before the direct object, or we can put it here, following the direct object. So I can have Dave gives a ball, or actually we haven't had a ball, gives a horse to Sextus. The other way, in this case right here, the indirect object to Sextus is being placed after the direct object, which is horse. And we'll talk about a direct object here in a second. But the indirect object right here is to or for, and it's coming after, in English, it's coming after the direct object. So we have the subject, we have the verb, we have the direct object, and then we have the indirect object. Now we can put that indirect object in English. Dave gives Sextus a horse. So we can put the indirect object here, right there in that pattern. So there are two patterns in English that we use for an indirect object. What exactly, Coach Trammell, is an indirect object? An indirect object receives action. It does receive action, but it doesn't receive action directly from the subject. Usually there is something like the horse in this case that is in between the action of the subject and the reception of the action. So Dave is actually physically transferring give to horse. Sextus, through the horse, receives that action. So Sextus receives the action indirectly. He does not receive it directly. Easiest way to explain this is with to whom, to what, for whom, or for what. These are the questions that the indirect question, or the indirect object answers. Dave gives a horse to whom? Well, he gives it to Sextus. Dave gives a horse for whom? For Sextus, he gives a horse. So answering these questions makes something an indirect object. If I have John throws a ball, and I ask myself those questions, to whom, for whom, to what, or for what, if I answer that question with the next word, then that word would be an indirect object. John throws a ball to whom? To Dave. John throws a ball for whom? He throws a ball for Dave. Or John throws a ball to what? John throws a ball to the wall. Or to the, how about let's go to the dog. And John throws the ball, a ball for the dog. Those are all indirect questions, or indirect objects, sorry. Because they answer the questions to whom, for whom, to what, or for what. That's what an indirect question, or indirect object is in English. Accusative. Now, this is a favorite one of mine because, well, frankly, it's quite complicated. There's no way around it. there are three different possibilities for the accusative. It can be the direct object, it can be the object of a preposition, or it can be the accusative subject of an infinitive. Now that's great, Coach. I know that. I can write that down on my chart. I know when I write down the accusative case that I have to put direct object, the object of a preposition, or the accusative subject. I know that. And I know that my endings for the accusative are A-M-A-S-U-M-O-S-E-N-E-S. I know that. But what is a direct object? Direct object is a receiver of the action. A direct object will receive the action. It basically answers the question, what or who? When it comes to the subject, John throws what? What does he throw? Who does he throw? Well, he throws a ball. That is a direct object. Direct object, if you give me a subject and a verb, will answer the question, what or who? That's all a direct object is. Receives the action. What or who? Now, as an object of a preposition, we have several ways that we can present objects of preposition in Latin. One of them is dealing with motion, and that's usually what the accusative does. We have specific prepositions like odd, like per, and like prope that will all take the accusative as the object of a preposition. That's great, Coach. I've memorized that. I know that. But what is the object of a preposition, and where does it go in Latin? Well, that's what I'm here to answer. The object of a preposition is when I take a preposition like to, and I tell you to what? Well, to roam. Or I tell you this one is through or along. Along what? Well, along the road, Coach. Roam and the road are the objects of the preposition. And if we're dealing with odd, per, or prope, we're going to give roam and road accusative endings. So we would have odd romam, and we would have per weam. We would give it those accusative endings when dealing with those three prepositions. The object of a preposition is just that. You have a preposition followed by a noun. That noun is going to be the object of that preposition in English. Okay, let me erase this real quick. Last, we have the accusative subject of an infinitive. That's a little tougher, but we can deal with it. We can deal with it. We know that the subject is the doer of the action, so we're going to have sextus. I'm going to make that smaller real quick. We know that the verb is the actual action of the sentence, so we're going to say that sextus wants something. Now, just like the direct object, an infinitive phrase answers the question, what? Sextus wants what? Well, an infinitive phrase has a structure of its own. You're going to use an accusative subject. So who's the doer of the action that he wants? Well, we'll say Cornelia is. Whatever he wants Cornelia to do will be the infinitive. Sextus wants Cornelia to hit Sextus. To hit what? Sextus is a direct object. Remember, direct object answers the question what? Cornelia to hit what? Sextus. So answering the question what makes Sextus the direct object. And sort of the same way, that's why the infinitive phrase replaces the direct object in this pattern, because it does answer the question what. Okay, so in Latin, the subject is going to have a nominative ending. We'll use us. Wants is a verb. It's singular. It's third person. Third person singular ending is T. Accusative subject Cornelia will be in the accusative form Corneliam. So we're going to give it an accusative ending. Infinitive, that's that A-R-E, E-R-E stuff. Or verare, A-R-E because it belongs to the first conjugation. Direct objects we know are in the accusative case. So we will use an accusative ending, um, for sextus. So we have sextus cornelium or verare, sextum. So I know in English that nominative becomes a subject. This verb stays a verb. This accusative, because of the presence of this infinitive, becomes my accusative subject. Infinitive follows. And then the direct object of that infinitive phrase right here is sextum. So hopefully now we understand what an accusative subject is. Accusative subject is just the subject or the doer of the infinitive, which is an action, the action to hit. The doer of that to hit is cornelium. So just like before, what was a subject? The subject was a doer of the action. However, because it's an infinitive and not a regular verb, we use an accusative subject instead. All right, we're going to move on to the ablative. The ablative is the object of a preposition. Again, we have ablative endings. Remember, we have a macron over that A. I guess I forgot to put that on there. The endings that we're dealing with are A with a macron, IS, O, IS, E, and ibis. Now, you can use prepositions like in, or ob, or ex. These all take the ablative as their object of a preposition. And remember, object of a preposition is just the noun that follows the preposition. So in what? In the road. In this case, road is the object of that preposition. I would translate it as in we are with a macron. Again, giving it an ablative ending. The difficult part about the ablative is that it does create on its own, without a preposition, a prepositional phrase sometimes. We have an ablative of means, we have ablative of manner, and we have ablative of time, all of which create a preposition all on their own without having to have a preposition in Latin. Now in English we still have to have a preposition. The ablative of means tells me by means of, and then there's that noun that is the object of the preposition. There it is. It's going to go right here. By means of what? Well, whatever that answers, by means of a foot, of a branch, whatever. We can also translate the ablative of means as with. With what? With a foot, with a branch, whatever we want to use. And in that case, for example, branch, we would say ramo, with a branch or by means of a branch. And that's the ablative of means. There's no preposition in the Latin. But whenever I put it into English, I have to give it my own preposition. And with the ablative of means, if I'm telling you with what or by means of what I'm accomplishing an action, we would use by means of or with. Normally the means is going to be an object that can be used to finish the action. Now manner, on the other hand, is usually an emotion or a way in which we can do something emotionally, or that's really what it deals with. It tells me how I'm dealing with something. For example, if I have ira, I'm going to translate it as with. And then with what? Well, with anger, coach. And that's the emotional way that we are doing the action. It's telling me how. It's telling me how I'm doing the action. How. So if this tells me with what I'm doing the action, the means tells me with what I'm doing the action. The ablative of manner tells me how I'm doing the action, in what manner I'm doing the action. Now time tells me obviously when I'm doing the action. Again, I don't have to have a preposition in Latin, but I do have to have a preposition in English, and it would be in the second hour. So as the object of a preposition, it's answering that question, what, after the preposition. In what? Well, in the second hour, coach. Second hour. So in Latin, we have an ablative of means. Sextus, that's the subject, coach, because it has a nominative ending. Sextus annoys Cornelia. Annoys who? Well, answer the question who, coach, so it's accusative. It's my direct object. And he annoys her with a foot. By means of does not need a preposition. So it's just ablative all by itself. But in English, I have to use the word with. And then my verb is wexot. That is an ablative of means. It tells me with what I accomplish this action, or in this case, with what Sextus accomplishes the action. Sextus is doer of annoy, so Sextus annoys. Who is he annoying? Cornelia. That's the direct object, answering the question who. With what is he annoying Cornelia? With what? Answering the question with what is going to tell me that it is an ablative of means. So Sextus annoys Cornelia with his foot. If I have manner, Sextus, that's my subject. Ablative, this is going to end up telling me how he does the action. Let's say that he's waking up Cornelius. Who is he waking up? Who? Cornelius. Answering the question who makes it accusative, direct object, and he arouses or wakes up Cornelius with anger. How does he do it? With anger. In English, we may even say angrily. But if you get this ablative like this, that's answering the question how the action is being accomplished, Sextus is accomplishing the action how? With anger. How is he waking up Cornelius? With anger. He's angry. Now, if I'm answering the question when, if I say Sextus wakes Cornelius up at the second hour, this tells me when, so it's an ablative of time. Who is he waking up? Again, Cornelius. That makes answering the question who makes it a direct object, so I make it accusative, and then I finish with my verb. So in this case, we have an ablative of means, we have an ablative of manner, we have an ablative of time. Hopefully that helps you with establishing what an object of a preposition is in English, and also reviews what the ablative is being used for in Latin. Finally, we have the vocative case, the direct address. This is really fairly easy. If I want to call someone out, if I want to say, hey, you, pay attention to me. In English, we say, Steve, stop. If I'm trying to gain someone's attention by calling out their name, I'm directly addressing that person. Davis. I can use a comma here too. Davis, prepare the horses. This is a direct address in English. And in Latin, this direct address is going to have a vocative ending. Coach, I know what the vocative endings are. I know that the vocative is direct address, but I'm not sure what a direct address is. Direct address is simply telling someone, hey, pay attention to me. Steve, Davis, Tom, Jack, listen. That's what a direct address is. So if I say, Cornelia, don't walk in the fields. Again, cornelia, because it is vocative, will have a vocative ending in Latin, cornelia. That's a vocative ending. Then a comma. I have don't walk in the fields. Don't is a command, noli. Don't wish to walk. It would be an infinitive. In the fields is a prepositional phrase. Does it answer the question with what means or with what? Nope. Does it answer the question how? Nope. Does it answer the question when? Nope. So it's not a means, manner, or time. I'm sorry. It's not ablative of means, manner, or time. So it must have a preposition. The preposition is in. Is there motion involved? Do not walk into the fields or in the fields. If it's into, we would have motion. We do not have motion. Without motion, we're going to use the ablative. It is plural, so I'll use the ablative plural. And that is a review of the grammatical structures of each case in Latin. Hopefully, guys, this helps you out. If not, come find me and we'll talk about it some more.